Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring guests and topics that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I'm excited to chat with Rodric Lenhart. Let me tell you a little bit about Rodric. So he is a Michigan-born, lifelong entrepreneur, multi-number-one best-selling author, and sought-after speaker who started his business journey at a young age. Over the last 30 years, he's expanded his ventures to create multiple multi-million-dollar companies in both product and service industries. Having traveled to more than 50 countries across the 6 continents, Rodric brings a unique worldview and deep appreciation for freedom and autonomy to his work, donating all profits to his foundation, Send a Student Leader Abroad, in partnership with EF Tours, with a goal of sending 1 million kids on a life-changing trip. Today, we're going to talk about a subject that, as I've been a past project manager, this is a subject that I think is really important, and it's something that also often gets us stuck, and that is embracing change, the ultimate superpower. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Rodric Lenhart. Rodric, so great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Vicki.
And before we get into the questions, I just wanted to say that it is like people just have such a hard time accepting change. I think that the pandemic helped somewhat for some folks, but it's still hard. And I don't think they always recognize that that's what's keeping them stuck.
Yeah. Well, we aren't taught to think that way, right?
Yeah.
So that was a lot of the reason I wrote the book, for that's what the book was about, peace, prosperity, and the courage to change course. That's the subtitle. So it's necessary. And looking back on my life, I semi-retired at 42. And when I sold my last business, and looking back on my life, part of the reason that I wrote the book, what was my superpower? What made the difference? I'm just a kid from Michigan that grew up with no money. Like there's no reason for me to have achieved and done what I've done in my life. And ultimately, that's what it came down to was the ability not just to recognize I need to change, but to build the tools within myself that allowed me to take that first step, the most important step.
Mm-hmm. And it's really so important that we do recognize that need in ourselves. But before we get into more of this very interesting conversation, I'd love for you to share a couple things. First, you gave a little bit of hint of the first one. Where do you call home? Where do you live?
At the moment, I'm in Virginia, in the mountains. I've got about a 2,000 acre view back there for people that are on video. I spent most of my career in Charleston, South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina. I left one day after university and said, I'm moving south. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not doing it. So
we are so much alike in that. Yeah. Pittsburgh girl moves south.
Yeah. So I've been here for a couple years, and I spent about half my time. I went to Brown University, got my ICF in professional coaching. wrote the book. I do that about half the time, and the other half of the time I build hot rods and do a lot of woodworking and don't see a person or a plane or a car for weeks
Yeah.
at a time if I don't want to. So it's
Yeah.
been great.
You probably see a lot of stars where you live too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're
Yeah.
certified dark sky here. So
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. So you you had, we gave a little bit about your journey, but talk to us more about that. You said you left school and decided you were going to move, but what really drove you to want to become a coach, and then this whole thing about change? There had to have been some pivotal moments or aha moments that said, this is what people need. People need to understand this, and this is how it helped me. So I need to share my message. So talk about that journey.
yeah. So, lifelong entrepreneur. I mean, even through college, I had already started two businesses, and I'm legit shipping products worldwide businesses. And I'm sitting in business classes listening to people who had never ran a business in their
Yeah.
life teach me about what it's going to be like. So college was kind of brutal, but,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
survived and I graduated with good grades and, but never really used it. The things that I learned that have propelled me in my entrepreneurial side are things I learned when I was 7 years old selling golf balls back to golfers down at the public course at the end of my street. And we grew up with next to no money. So if I wanted shoes or a Nintendo, I'm dating myself, or a bike or whatever, I had to figure out how I was going to go make a couple bucks. So I learned to knock on doors and I learned to talk to the public and how to sell basically. And
Mhm.
people are afraid of that word sales, but ultimately we're all always selling something. You're
Yeah.
selling your spouse on where to go to dinner, or where to go on vacation. You're selling your boss on a promotion. We're all
Mhm.
selling something all the time. So it's funny in the coaching sphere, and then in life in general, they say do what you love, and I say do what you love and then take a class in sales and marketing. Even if you're a brilliant painter, you got to figure out how to get into the gallery.
Yeah.
So um I've had multiple different businesses in multiple different industries, but the bulk of my career was spent in real estate development and construction. And my focus now, if you really want to get down to a really kind of deep niche level, is helping people reclaim their time. While I built those businesses, it's now 60 countries on 6 continents, and
Mm.
Antarctica's finally on the books. COVID killed my Antarctica trip because I've been dying to say 7 continents for a long time.
Yeah.
And but I did all of that travel and went to the World Series and the Super Bowl and F1 at Monza and all of these things while I built those businesses. I didn't have this illusion that I had to wait until I was 65 or 70 years old and hope to buy back my health and buy back the friends that I wanted to enjoy those things with
Mhm.
and buy back my family. So letting other people know that that's possible. I didn't I didn't think I would ever become a coach. But when you look back, you realize you had been doing that for a long
All
time.
your life. Hmm.
The people around me that were, dude, how do you do it? Like if I could count how many times somebody has uttered that exact phrase to me,
Yeah.
um, and I say, kind of partially in jest, well, I booked the flight and then I booked the hotel and then I leave on the flight. Like, but it certainly is more complicated than that. But it comes down to building a business or a career. It doesn't have to just be for entrepreneurs, but building a business that serves you and not the other way
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs oftentimes build themselves a job and not a very good one.
Yeah. So true. So, so this traveling around the world, I would think gave you a lot of different perspectives, and being able to really communicate more effectively with your people you coach and people you encounter. So talk to us a little bit about that, how that's changed your outlook on life and how you run your business.
Yeah, I mean, travel's been a huge part of my life, and it's a lot of the reason we started the foundation and why we partnered with EF Tours. And our foundation is called Send a Student Leader Abroad. And the idea behind that is that, and if you're not familiar with EF Tours, they're a huge kind of $7 billion company. They have 30,000 employees, and think middle school kids that go to Europe. on summer break. Our goal is to be able to send kids that otherwise couldn't afford a trip like that, but they've got, that's why it's called send a student leader. They've got the grit and the hustle, but their circumstance just dictates they're never going to be able to do something like that. And the reason being is that travel, unlike anything else I've experienced, gives you a sense of perspective and a sense of empathy that you can't get otherwise. And you start to realize very quickly that we are one big human family, and there is no them. There's only us. And when you hear, certainly in our political climate now, you hear a lot about them.
Yeah.
And you start to realize that all 7-8 billion of us, for the most part, want the same things. We want a good meal and a roof over our head and a better life for our kids. And it doesn't matter what part of the world you're from. And our vision is to give that experience to kids who, they might not be able to afford to do something like that, but they're going to take that conversation of know them, only us, back to a community that also isn't having that conversation. And the spider web effect of that, I think, is exponential. So the reason we chose that for, I've done a lot of work with like Habitat for Humanity and crisis assistance ministries and those kind of things. But the reason we decided to start our own thing is because I was that kid who couldn't afford that trip. And I distinctly remember my mom and dad screaming at each other about sending me to Europe in 7th grade. And ultimately it changed my trajectory, who I became as a person. And look at me now, right? Now I'm afforded the opportunity to be able to help a lot of other people because they took that step. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but
no, but it's perfect. And it is a difference. I have 7 kids in my family, and I'm really the only one that's traveled to different places, and it's so, it just opens up your eyes to the possibilities. I think it makes you say yes to opportunities more so because you're not so kind of pigeonholed in one type of life. And it does make you appreciate what we have here in the US for sure. So let's just talk a little bit about how is it possible that we can build a thriving business and have this, as yours is, I'm sure, a very fascinating life, using this idea of change is happening and we should embrace it.
Yeah. So the book, $1 Million Flip Flops, is, inside of it, there's what I call the waves method. And without going, we could spend hours just talking about that, but without going too deep into the weeds, waves stands for your why, authenticity, values, exploration, and statement, meaning statement of purpose. And we hear a lot about your why. You hear a lot about Simon Sinek, and your why is a big buzzword these days. The authenticity is one of the most important pieces, because often we're prescribed a life by our parents or our pastors or our partners. And unless you go into the next one, values, from your own place, from something that is completely you and not clouded by anyone else, then when you go through the exercises that build your values, which is what's important to you, and you need to build a life that is built around those values. And most people can't tell you what they are. If they do tell you what they are, when I work with people one-on-one, you hear the cloud of the other people being imparted on them. And the example I like to give is when I'm working with a parent, family will be one of their top values. And when you really start to drill, and I'm like a toddler, right? But why? But why? But why? But why? You realize family isn't one of their top values, and it doesn't have to be to make them a good parent. And when their eyes open to that, it's, you literally watch 1,000 light bulbs go off on the other side of the screen for in person. And the idea when you build your values list is, the E in waves is you explore that. So everything's cruising in your life. You're happy. You just feel in that flow state. Well, what values were you honoring during that time? And the same goes for the crap at the bottom. Things aren't working out. I'm miserable. What's wrong? Well, invariably it's because you're not honoring those values in your life.
Yeah.
So, and then ultimately we build a statement of purpose, and that's the guiding principle. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, obviously, and almost all of them have a business mission statement. They can rattle it off like that, but they can't tell you what their statement of purpose is, why they're here, what they want to do with their life, and which one is arguably more important. And for entrepreneurs in particular, because they have that ability to change course fast, they don't have to go and get approval. They don't have to send in an RFP. They can change it tomorrow in their pajamas, right? And for them in particular, where that statement of purpose and their business mission statement intersect is what I call the happiness intersection. And that's where you have a business that fills your soul. And because you come from that place of abundance, now you're able to help your employees, your customers, and the world at large.
Yeah, so true. And I love, each of those areas, but the values, I think as any entrepreneur, anyone, you need to know your values to be able to know what to do, what's next. When you're stuck in a decision of whether you should do something as opportunities are presented to you, the values are your guiding light. They, your true north. And I love that you talk about the purpose too. For me, I retired in 2018, way older than 42, I'm afraid. but it was 2 years of having retirement, and I thought, there are things that I need to do still, that I have to give back, and understanding what my purpose was, I think keeps us young. I think keeps us energized to get up every day with a smile on our face, even though we know we're going to have challenges, even though we know that maybe the sun's not shining that day, but what we're doing is for a reason.
Yeah. Mentor of mine used to say the only people without problems is a better quality of problem.
So why do people have trouble taking those first steps to make a massive change?
It really comes down to systems, and it's like anything else. If you go out on the golf course and you've never swung a golf club, you're not going to be very good.
Yes.
And we're not taught we're taught to steadfast, right? You go, you get the job, you're there for 30 years, you get the gold watch. If you move around, you're a flip flopper, right? That's why it's flip flops is represents change. It really just comes down to practice and not having somebody in your corner that understands from an outside person. It's why coaching is so important. I have a coach. I coach a lot of other people. My coach has a coach. I've played sports for my whole life. There's a reason the greats in every industry have people around them that are outside of their situation and can look with a fresh perspective. And I talk a lot about, I just gave a keynote for 2,500 graduates up in New York. And the whole point was basically don't listen to your friends and family.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of friends and family in the audience. And I'm like, sorry, guys, but this might rub you the wrong way. But, your friends and family oftentimes are the worst place for advice. Well, why? It's not because they don't love you. It's because they love you that they hold you back. If you take off and your business is successful and you're going to go travel the world, well, they're not going to get to see you. Or if you have an opportunity, you're going to move to LA from New York, they're going to lose their friend or they're going to lose their family member. And their advice to you is clouded both by that and by their life experience. And when they've been hurt by change and all of that baggage that comes along with it. So there's a lot of pieces to it, but it comes down to having the right people in your corner and having the systems ultimately. And you nailed it. What the waves method does is it produces for you, made by you, a decision filter. So when it's, hey, should we have kids? Hey, should we move to London? Hey, should we do this? I can look at that system and go, yep, it matches my values. It's in line with my statement of purpose. All this work that I had done previously says yes, instead of a should I or shouldn't I list.
Yeah. The should I. That just keeps you stuck for so long. Time is flying by. I just do want to get a couple more questions in. And so whenever you, in some of your websites and things I've seen, you talk about this quote, the cost of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. I think that's such a great quote. And people could spend some time really breaking that down. But what made you want to have that quote to live by?
So that quote has been on every wall, either physically or in social media since MySpace. So go way back. And it's also tattooed on my arm.
Oh my
So
goodness.
um I obviously reclaiming your time is what I do as a coach for business, most valuable currency we have. And when you start, if you break it all the way down to the other side and you say, all right, I'm going to buy this new car, payment's $500 a month. No, if you make $25 an hour, payment's a lot more than that. The payment's 20 hours of your life. It's costing you 20 hours to drive that car. Just have the to make the payment, right? And so I think if you look at your life in terms of time spent, it changes both where you want to go and kind of what you let into your life and who you surround yourself with.
Oh my goodness. And it's really, I think, whenever you think of it that way, it really helps you again in that decision making process. That oftentimes you hear people say, well, I'll do a pro and a con to make a decision. And I think maybe when they're doing that, they don't really talk about the cost of the time, and just so many things. So as this lifelong entrepreneur, for me, I was in corporate for over 40 years before I decided to try this. And that is where, whenever all you out there that decide now you're going to do something that you really love to do, all of your friends and family have that mindset of a corporate and they think you're crazy most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what has been your biggest challenge?
Oh man. My personally, my biggest challenge has been there's so many things I want to do. And I've been that way since I was 10 years old. And there's still so many things I want to do, but in order to I want to give a couple things all of my attention and really make them world class. And that's what I'm trying to focus on with both the coaching and the book and the speaking and the foundation. So narrowing my focus, I think, has been my biggest challenge.
Yeah, that's true. And it isn't just the shiny objects, but I think when you see that you have a gift and a talent that could help someone else, it's hard to walk away from that. It really is. So.
Absolutely.
And then the final thing is you went from 0 to million and back. And what was the biggest lesson that you learned?
You hear this from a lot of people, whether they go through a physical ailment or they go through financial troubles. And, I was really young and I put all of my money in real estate thinking what could go wrong. And we all know what went wrong. And
2008.
yeah. And so I went from, I was a very young and I was well off. And, I always say I was making more in a month than my parents ever made in a year. And, but I was anxious and I was depressed. And sometimes I found myself suicidal. And I went through a really dark period that ended with losing almost everything. And I think that ultimately is when my mind switched, and that's when I started focusing almost solely on experience and not accumulation. And it's made all the difference for the past 15 years.
That's why I end my podcast with, that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride, because in my experience with so many people that they went after that gold ring, and it was always looking forward and missing all that was happening all around them.
Yeah.
And that's what makes life so wonderful and so brilliant, to be able to savor the small little things that make it that way.
Life is what happens while we're making other plans, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, it has been so wonderful. I could probably talk to you for hours about this topic of
Yeah,
change.
same.
And I'll have to have you back so we can explore some other things that I didn't get to today. But thank you so much for being a guest. And we're going to share your screen because I think that the audience is going to want to connect with you, be able to get that book, as well as see what you have on your website for that. So if you are listening, you know that you should have been taking notes all along, but quickly go grab that paper and pencil, because I will share the contact information with you. For those that are watching, you can go to milliondollarflipflops.com as the website. Again, that's milliondollarflipflops with an S.com. On Facebook, it's Million Dollar Flip Flops, initial cap for those. And then Instagram is Million Dollar Flip Flops, again, initial cap. LinkedIn is Rodric Lenhart, his name, so you can find him. And also on Instagram, Facebook, and as in LinkedIn, you can find him by searching his name as well. On X or Twitter, Million Dollar FF, again, Million Dollar FF. YouTube is at Million Dollar Flip Flops, and he has a great podcast that you want to check out. It's Million Dollar Flip Flops Podcast. I'm going to turn it over to Rodric to talk to you about what you might find if you go to that website, the links, the resources that he has that might help you to be able to be a change agent, as well as move your business to success. And also what areas in social media that he spends the most time in that might be able to have you connect a little bit quicker to him. So I'll turn it over to Rodric.
Yeah, thanks, Vicki. So milliondollarflipflops.com. If you go /book or just hit the menu at the top, book, for your audience, there's a bunch of bonuses in there. You can read the first 2 chapters for free. There's a bunch of access to a bunch of freebies and tools you can use to start implementing tomorrow. I spend most of my time on Instagram at Million Dollar Flip Flops, and I have a LinkedIn newsletter called Freedom Over Fortune that you can subscribe to.
Fantastic, said Rodric. It's been just so wonderful chatting with you. I just think you had so much great information to share with the group, great story, and I love that your whole perspective, the cost of anything is about the amount of life you exchange it for, is a great quote. Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Vicki.
And as I mentioned earlier, I always end with life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.